1991 Camel Supercross Series, like the wake of an ocean-going liner, was powerful, full of energy. And like the unpredictable wake, the Supercross Series ran a turbulent course. When the final checkered flag was thrown, just as the wake blends into the sea, the stars of Supercross dropped the gauntlets of battle. The pressure of intense competition, the smell of oil, and the roar of engines gave way to serenity and the gentle pounding of the Pacific surf. Season-long animosities born from on-track conflicts and nurtured by screaming crowds were set aside in favor of sunshine and the renewal of friendships gone astray. They gathered on the island of Catalina to relax and reflect on the season completed just one day before. For some, a season of disappointment. For others, a season to one degree or another of success. For only one, though, the reflection of the season past was a dream come true. In the beginning, the Supercross Championship was the goal of many. Realistically, though, only a handful had the talent, the equipment, and the determination to earn the coveted prize. Given an outside chance to capture the crown were a group of hard-charging young lions. Team Suzuki's Mike LaRocco, Kawasaki's Mike Kiedrowski, a recent transfer from the Honda team. The veterans included the winningest rider in the history of Supercross, Rick Johnson. The Honda star, plagued with injuries the past two seasons, was making one final attempt at a third Supercross crown. Jeff Ward, another two-time champion, was primed and ready. If Ward, the oldest rider on the circuit, stayed healthy, there was no question he would be a threat. Guy Cooper, the Suzuki star, has the talent, but in past years lacked consistency. The favorites, most often mentioned in preseason polls, numbered 4. The youngest, sensational 18-year-old Damon Bradshaw would temper his go-for-broke style.
This year I've got a little bit different outlook on that. You know, like I said, there's 18 races, and, you know, me and Brian's talked about it. He goes, we don't want to win here and, you know, crash next week. He goes, if we have to take a second this week and win next week, that's what we want to do. He goes, we want to be there at the end of those 18 races.
Jean-Michel Bayle, 2 times a world champion, finished in the runner-up spot in 1990 while recording 5 wins.
Last year I missed 2 races in the start of the season, so this year I have to try to be more consistent and try to win the race like I do last year and try to finish every race.
Kawasaki's Jeff Matasevich led the 1990 series through most of the season. A conservative riding style as the series neared completion cost the Kawasaki ace the Supercross championship.
This year, my attitude on it is a little bit changed. I'm going to go out there and go for the win every time. And if I'm in third, I'm not going to settle for third. I'm going to go for the win.
They were all shooting at 2-time and defending champion Jeff Stanton. The Honda rider started slow in 1990, but came on strong in the closing stages of the series to capture the crown. He would be the odds-on favorite to make it 3 in a row in 1991.
For me, it's going to take a stronger start at the first part of the year to come out aggressive and strong and be ready to handle the rookies and to win races and start out and be consistent all the way through the year.
The year for the stars of the Camel Supercross Series had nothing to do with time. The year instead was a long, grueling season measured by 18 events that ranged from one end of the country to the other. The Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida was the site of the opening round and the first of many come-from-behind rides that would characterize the entire series. In the second of 2 heat races, Damon Bradshaw ran into Jeff Stanton and crashed. Only the first 4 finishers from the heats transferred to the championship points-paying main. Running at the back of the pack, Bradshaw's chances were slim. The teenager, though, never gave up, and on the last lap was looking for a way around Ron Tishner to move into 4th. With the pressure on, Tishner made this mistake, and Bradshaw was in. In the semifinals, Tishner from nearby Palm Harbor, Florida, rebounded to finish 2nd and also made the main. The stage for round 1 of the series was set, and with the drop of the gate, the season was underway. 20 of the fastest Supercross riders in the world charged toward the first corner. And to the delight of the highly partisan crowd, Florida's own Ron Tishner, rider number 12, was again center stage. Behind Tishner, the best in the business, and a dogfight for the runner-up spot. Damon Bradshaw, number 11, and Jeff Ward, the veteran on the green Kawasaki, provided the action. For several laps, the pair of riders jockeyed for position, never more than a couple of bike lengths apart. Then, Jeff Stanton from out of the pack turned that duo into a trio. The pressure was on and the question became, who would crack first? It was answered when Jeff Ward moved into second and promptly crashed. The Kawasaki ace was uninjured but out of contention. Meanwhile, up front, the battle for second turned into a fight for the lead. Stanton dove to the inside of Tishner, took the line away, and moved to the head of the pack. But hold on, Bradshaw got an incredible drive and moved from third all the way to first. Stanton, though, after working so hard to catch and pass Tishner, was not about to be denied. The defending champ camped on Bradshaw's rear wheel for the next couple of laps, then on the roughest part of the track, blew by the Yamaha rider to regain the lead. The battle for the #1 spot was as good as over. Second place, though, was still up for grabs, and the Frenchman, Jean-Michel Bayle, did the grabbing. Bradshaw was dropped to third. At the checkered flag, it was Stanton, Bayle, Bradshaw, Tishner, and finishing fifth from dead last after crashing on the opening lap was Mike Kidrowski. The flight to the finish was underway. For most of the Supercross stars, the season opener was a big success. The exceptions? Guy Cooper, who missed the opening round due to an injury suffered in an off-season European race.
A rider in front of me fell, and the bike cartwheeled in the air, and I tried to avoid it, and it came down on my hand, and it pushed the fifth knuckle back. It required surgery, and they put 2 screws in it to hold it in place. It's going to be 100%, but it's going to be time before it's 100%.
Mike LaRocco rode Orlando and finished 6th. He did it in extreme pain.
Well, at the end of last season, we were doing some testings on the new bikes, and I crashed and hurt my wrist, and it's taken all winter. I missed some races in Europe for it to heal, and it's still not healed.
And Jeff Ward, who took the Orlando lead, then promptly crashed. Ward finished 9th.
Well, I think I got a little too anxious there. I was trying to get Tishner right away because I knew I could get away a little bit from the guys, and I was riding really well. I just got over anxious, grabbed a handful of throttle, and jumped and landed on this one bump that which threw me down, and it broke my throttle, so I had a hard time coming back. And but this week will be a different story.
For Jeff Ward, the storyline at the Houston Astrodome, round 2 of the series, had the same ending as the one in Florida. In the second heat race of the night, Ward was chasing Kawasaki teammate Jeff Potasevich for the lead when he made this critical error. Ron Tishner, unable to avoid the carnage, was the second victim of Ward's mistake. Both riders were out for the night. Suzuki's Guy Cooper, rider number 5, celebrated his return to racing in similar fashion with this crash. Unlike Ward and Tishner, Cooper was able to continue and finish 13th for the night. Stanton, meanwhile, after a first lap crash, was forced to play catch-up. The winner of the opening round was 7th with the checkered flag. The hero of the night was Jean-Michel Bayle. The Frenchman took the lead out of the gate, cruised to the win, and after 2 events took control of the championship chase.
Last week I was very comfortable too, but I just want to finish second for the first race. But today is a championship start, so I need to win some race, so I'll start today.
From Houston, the series continued west to Anaheim, California. Jeff Ward, with 2 sprained wrists, turned in his best performance of the season with a strong second-place ride. Behind Ward were Kawasaki teammates Jeff Potasevich in 3rd, and in 4th, Mike Kidrowski. Jean-Michel Bayle, after a poor start, finished 5th. At the checkered flag, they were all chasing Honda's Jeff Stanton. The defending Supercross champ rode a near-perfect race to capture his 2nd win of the year. Competing in Supercross entails hours of practice and preparation for both the rider and the bike. Because in order to survive the tremendous pounding the body takes in this sport, the top guns of Supercross have to be in peak physical condition.
Usually we get home on a Sunday. It's usually a day off because we race Saturday night. I have nothing in the back of my head. Well, I wonder if I, didn't run enough, or I wonder if I didn't, do enough push-ups or sit-ups. I feel I get to the race, I'm real confident.
Next stop, the Great Northwest, Seattle's Kingdome, where native son Larry Ward was hoping for a repeat performance of last year's win, his one and only Supercross victory to date. And when the gate went down in the main event, the number 10 Suzuki rider took the hole shot and held on for the early lead. Close behind, though, a pack of rough customers with every intention of spoiling Larry Ward's party. Number 5, Guy Cooper, dogged his Suzuki teammate relentlessly. And while Cooper eyed the leader, Jean-Michel Bayle served notice he'd be a player, and the battle for the lead turned into a trifecta. Guy Cooper made the first move with this block pass to the inside. He and Ward thrilled the crowd, going back and forth with side-by-side sprints between corners. Nearing the tunnel, color analyst Mitch Payton sees where number 8, Jean-Michel Bayle's headed, and knew that it spelled bad news for Larry Ward.
Gonna set him up for an inside pass, Larry, right here. Right, boom, right there, got it.
You called it, Mitch Payton, you called it, sent an inside pass coming up. Where did you get that crystal ball?
Just one lap later, Bayle used the same tactic in the same spot to pass Cooper and take the lead. Watch again. Cooper is wide. Bayle goes to the inside and is able to make it stick. Cooper's only chance was to back out of the fray. That pass, for all intents and purposes, ended the scrap for the lead position. For the rest of the race, the smooth-sailing Frenchman seemed to have a strong tailwind, perhaps fanned by the ferocious battles that heated up behind him. Number 11, Damon Bradshaw, with about 6 laps remaining, took over third with this block pass. In the process, Bradshaw almost loses control. Bradshaw's hold on third place was a long way from secure. Enter a hard-charging Jeff Stanton, who gets by Bradshaw. Bradshaw, wanting no part of fourth place, tries to muscle Stanton. The two bang bikes. Stanton shoves his way past the Yamaha rider. Bradshaw would get a break when Stanton is tripped up with a lap rider. He runs into a hay bale. Damon is quick to take advantage and charges past. Meanwhile, holding on tenuously to second place was Larry Ward, who had fought back repeated challenges all night. On the white flag lap, it all comes apart for the hometown hero. First, Damon Bradshaw gets by. And then, after Jean-Michel Bayle takes the checkered flag and the Supercross points lead, Jeff Stanton, with a last-ditch effort, caught and passed Larry Ward at the finish line jump. For Ward, the fourth-place finish would be his best finish of the season. After 4 races, the series was beginning to heat up. Just 30 points separated the top 6 riders in the Camel Supercross Championship point standings. From the Pacific Northwest, the Supercross Tour headed south to the pleasant surroundings of San Diego. The Supercross track, though, at Jack Murphy Stadium was anything but pleasant. Example, Jeff Ward. So far, the season has been most unkind to the former 2-time Supercross champ. Ward wishes he could shut his eyes and start all over again. But for Ward, the 1991 nightmare would continue. In the second heat, all alone at the head of the pack, Ward put his wheels in the wrong ruts and goes down. The snake-bit veteran had to go all the way to the last chance qualifier to make it to the main. That extra time on the track, though, may have helped. At the start of the main, he and Jeff Stanton gained the early advantage. The two former Supercross champs would run 1-2 at the outset with a star-studded group that included the best the sport has to offer close behind. Damon Bradshaw and Jean-Michel Bayle were in tow. But just 6 laps into the race, another disastrous episode for Ward. Ward, coming out of the whoop-de-doos, gets out of control and off the bike. And for the 3rd time in 5 races, the former champion has taken himself out of the race. That opened the door for Damon Bradshaw to move into second. Bradshaw, trailing by 21 points in the standings, was looking to make up some ground. He soon felt the heat of the man on top of the points ladder, Jean-Michel Bayle, who reeled Bradshaw in and was poised to make a move. Here's the live call.
There he goes. He made the move. Look at that. How smooth can you be? How in the world did he do that? Unbelievable move on the part of Jean-Michel Bayle. Bradshaw was riding just as fast as he could possibly ride. Jean-Michel Bayle came to the inside of him and just passed him and turned on the throttle and was gone.
And while Bayle can make it look so effortless, other riders also find ways to make things easy for him. Like Jeff Stanton. Here on lap 14, Stanton simply goes off the track, handing the lead to Bale, who wastes no time putting distance between himself and the rest of the field. Bale also put distance between himself and Stanton in the championship point standings. For the second week in a row, Jean-Michel Bale's flight to the finish finds him in the winner's circle. With 5 of 18 rounds complete, the Camel Supercross Series left the sunshine of California and moved east to rain and near-freezing temperatures. As a result, the track in Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium was a rutted, muddy, slippery mess. The riders checked it out prior to the main event and all agreed. Caution was the name of the game, and staying upright would ensure a decent finish. At the outset, though, Yamaha's Damon Bradshaw threw caution to the wind and captured the early lead. Those behind Bradshaw were forced to keep pace or sacrifice any chance to win. For some, like Kawasaki's Jeff Matasevich, the slick conditions were too much. Others, like Stanton, Bale, and Ward, were up to the challenge and kept the racing tight. For several laps, the front four toured the Atlanta track in freight train fashion. Then Jean-Michel Bale moved to the rear wheel of Stanton, and the battle was underway. Bale tried on virtually every inch of the track to pass, but every time he made a move, Stanton made the block. Finally, Stanton made a mistake. In a tight left-hand hairpin turn, Stanton followed a lap rider through the high part of the track. Bale went to the inside, and the pass was complete. Bale then set his sights on Bradshaw, but time ran out. Bradshaw took the checkered flag, and the Honda win streak was broken. The top guns of Supercross were among the over 200,000 motorcyclists that descended on Daytona during the annual pilgrimage known as Cycle Week. And the stars of the Camel Series brought the rain and mud from Atlanta with them. Daytona is the birthplace of Supercross, so it's only fitting that the track at the Daytona International Speedway would be the toughest the riders would face all year. 50% longer than the average Supercross track, plus the deep ruts and extra mud you pick up circling this monster 20 times makes Daytona anything but a day at the beach. And right from the outset, you knew it would be one of those days. Moving on to the main event, it will be more mayhem at the starting gate. As many as 8 riders go down in chain reaction, including series points leader Jean-Michel Bale. Skirting through the pileup, though, was Jeff Stanton. His strong riding style and stamina made for tough conditions like these. Stanton would be gunning for a record 3rd straight win at Daytona. Joining him at the head of the pack, Jeff Ward, a 3-time runner-up at Daytona. The two would be all alone and out front for most of the afternoon. But for Jean-Michel Bale, trying feverishly to make up ground he lost at the start, the going would be rough. The Frenchman would find himself off his bike 4 times in the race. But with moves like these, Bale would each time get back on pace and would put on a riding clinic. Bale would eventually weave his way from 20th in the field to finish 3rd behind Jeff Ward. The day, however, belonged to Jeff Stanton, whose red Honda led wire to wire. And as if to add an exclamation point to his dominance at Daytona, the king of the beach simply rolled up the hill. Daytona is Jeff Stanton's domain.
Once I got the start, I knew I just had to go out and relax. I didn't do that in the heat race and just play it real smooth. The ruts and the bumps, it was rough. It was the roughest track I've ever rode on. So I just wanted to keep a good, consistent pace and keep pulling on second place leader, and that's what I did.
Through the first 7 rounds, Bale and Stanton dominated the competition. They had each won 3 events and were only 4 championship points apart. At round 8, Sun Devil Stadium, Phoenix, Arizona, it was more of the same. In the early going, Jeff Stanton was out front, followed closely by Jeff Ward, rider number 3, and number 14 on the white KTM, Mike Fisher. Behind that trio, just slightly off the pace, came Guy Cooper, number 5, Mike Kudrowski, number 4, Jeff Matasevich, number 7, and Bale, rider number 8. The race action at this point turned from good to great. A block pass executed by Kudrowski dropped Cooper from 4th all the way to 7th. In the process, Bale snuck by Matasevich to take over 5th. The momentum should have shifted to Kudrowski, but Bale, who had fallen on the opening lap, was on a roll. Kudrowski was passed before he even knew the Frenchman was there. With a clear track in front of him, Bale wasted no time in catching the trio of riders battling for the lead. From the back of the pack to the front, Bale, with the smoothest, most fluid style of riding ever seen, was nothing short of spectacular. Putting his fluid style to work, Bale moved to the 3rd. Mike Fisher never had a chance. A couple of laps later, the same set of corners. This time the victim was Jeff Ward, and Bale was in 2nd place. The crowd in Sun Devil Stadium watched in anticipation. They knew Bale would try the same move on Stanton to take over the lead. It almost worked, but at the last instant, Stanton grabbed a handful of throttle and held on to the number 1 spot. For Bale, time was running out. All Stanton had to do to hold on for the win was block Bale's line. On the next go-around, Stanton tried exactly that. But after coming from so far off the pace, Bale was not about to be denied. With only inches to spare, the series points leader took over the number 1 position. From that point, there was no stopping the Frenchman with a smooth, fluid style. Bale took the checkered flag, his 4th of the season, and added 3 points to his championship lead. Jeff Ward finished 3rd, Mike Fisher 4th, with Mike Kudrowski rounding out the top 5. The midway point of the Supercross Series, round 9, was next on the schedule in St. Petersburg, Florida. The inaugural Supercross event at the all-new Suncoast Dome was full of excitement and some of the best race action to date. Damon Bradshaw set the tone when he talked about the track.
It's technical, and on a technical track, you have to be smooth, you have to stay in the groove, and you know, you have to hit everything perfect. It makes it a lot easier on your body. The humidity here is really high, so it's going to be a factor. You know, and also getting a good start. I think the track is going to be, you know, pretty decent for passing. You're probably going to see some bars banging tonight because of the way the corners are set up, but, you know, that's racing, and whoever wants to win the most is going to be the guy on top tonight.
And the opening heat race of the night had it all. The bar banging, the corner setup, and tight racing. The early leader was Jeff Stanton, followed closely by Ron Tishner, number 12, Jeff Ward, and Damon Bradshaw. For several laps, the quartet hammered the tough St. Petersburg track. At the midway point of the heat, Stanton started to pull away. Jeff Ward then found a way around Ron Tishner to take over the runner-up position and set sail after Stanton. Bradshaw was not about to be left behind, so he too forced a Tishner pass. For the next several laps, Ward played catch-up with Bradshaw in tow. On the last lap, Ward was in position to challenge. Stanton, though, had the good line through the right hairpin turn and held the lead. Meanwhile, Bradshaw had a full head of steam and was slightly out of control. And just like that, he was out of the race. Watch again from another angle. Bradshaw comes in hard, loses control, and is thrown from the seat of his Yamaha. Ward stops to avoid hitting Bradshaw and points back at Bradshaw as he rides away. What was he saying? Well, we'll leave that to your imagination. The action in the main event was even better. In the first lap, the running order was Bradshaw in the lead, Stanton second, Matasevich third, Jeff Ward and Jean-Michel Bale were right behind. Watch what happens when Bale goes for an early pass. From that angle and at speed, it looked like Bale might have knocked Matasevich down. Watch again. Matasevich sees Bale out of the corner of his eye and tried to block him. He went into the corner too deep and simply lost control. It's been that kind of year for Matasevich, who was out of contention, and Bale, who escaped unscathed. From that point, Bale closed quickly on Stanton in second place. He caught the defending champion in a rough set of loops and pulled alongside over the finish line jump. Stanton gave it all he had, but at that point, what he had was not enough. For the second consecutive week, Vail passed his Honda teammate. Next on Vail's hit list was the leader, Damon Bradshaw. For several laps, Vail tried every trick he knew to gain the advantage, and every time, just when it looked like the pass was made, Bradshaw reached down, grabbed a little extra, and held on to the lead. His opportunity came in the form of a fallen rider. Vail had time to react, and Bradshaw did not. That was not, however, the end of the bad luck for Bradshaw. With Jeff Stanton chasing him, Bradshaw came off a small jump front wheel first and coasted to the side of the track. When you see it in slow motion, you wonder how Bradshaw was able to hang on and avoid the crash. And that's the kind of year it's been for Bradshaw. Last lap, and there is still excitement on the track. Jeff Stanton is in second with Mike Kidrowski closing. Last corner coming up. Kidrowski goes for the pass and goes down. Vail wins it, Stanton was second, and Kidrowski picked himself off the ground and held on to third. The best finish of the season for the first-year Kawasaki rider, and coupled with Bradshaw's DNF, good enough to take over third place in the standings. For Damon Bradshaw and most of the other competitors, the season as it reached the midway mark had been one of frustration. Bradshaw was in 5th place in the championship point standings, 63 points behind Vail with a single win to his credit. Jeff Matasevich, the Kawasaki hopeful, who had led the championship chase throughout most of 1990, was in 4th place with no wins and was only 1 point ahead of Bradshaw. 3rd place in the standings with no wins but consistent 3rd, 4th, and 5th place finishes was Mike Kidrowski. The first-year Kawasaki rider was 54 points off the pace. Jean-Michel Vail and Honda teammate Jeff Stanton were the only riders enjoying successful seasons. With the exception of a 5th place finish in Anaheim for Vail and a 7th for Stanton in Houston, the pair had recorded all 1st, 2nds, or 3rds. It was questionable as the season hit the midway mark which of the two was the strongest.
I don't know. Right now it's very close, so I don't know who is the stronger because we are, very close in the point standing. But I think the series is very long, so we have a lot of race, and I think somebody gonna make a mistake before the end.
And the mistake came in the first heat race of the second half of the season. When the gate dropped at the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, site of rounds 10 and 11, Jeff Ward led the field to the first corner with Jeff Stanton right behind. Watch the far side of the track. Stanton came up short on a double jump and crashed. On Catalina Island, Stanton recalled the incident.
They had a double coming out of the first turn, and I came through in kind of the middle of the pack, and I believe I got tapped from the rear and lost my momentum. And I just came up way too short on the double, and I just had to jump over the bars on the bike, and pretty much sums it up. I did that, and it just pitched me right over the bars, and I landed right on my left shoulder.
Stanton got up and continued around the track at a slow rate of speed. He pulled into the mechanic signal area to discuss the situation with his mechanic, Dan Beckley, but it was only a formality. Later, as he sat in the pits with an ice bag on his shoulder, the look on Stanton's face said it all. Stanton was out for the night and perhaps longer. Stanton was not the only Jeff to have problems in heat race number 1. Jeff Ward was in second place chasing teammate Mike Kidrowski when he lost control of his Kawasaki just prior to the finish line jump. Now that was one of the season's more spectacular crashes and certainly deserving of a second look. Fortunately, when Ward's motorcycle shot off the top of the finish line jump, there was no one in the impact area when it landed. Kidrowski held on to win the opening heat with ease. The second heat of the night featured a battle between Damon Bradshaw, the leader, and Jeff Matasevich in second. Everything was fine until just past the midway point when Matasevich put this move on Bradshaw. Just like that, Bradshaw was not only knocked from the lead, but was knocked from the track. Matasevich later talked about the incident.
We just both went in the corner at the same time. I don't know what happened to Damon. I guess he fell from the sounds of it, but it wasn't dirty. It wasn't anything. He kept the gas on. I kept the gas on, and he ended up going down.
In the pits after Matasevich took the heat race win, the two riders, backed by uninvited supporters, further discussed the issue. An understanding was reached, and that was the end of it. Until next time. With Stanton out of the main, Vail's mission was clear. Stay out of trouble, score points, and the title would belong to the Frenchman. Those thoughts, however, did not keep Vail from putting his Honda close to the front when the gate dropped for the main event. At the front was Bradshaw with his nemesis, Matasevich, close behind. The crowd was looking for a replay of the heat race action staged earlier by Bradshaw and Matasevich. It was not, however, to be. Bradshaw, no help from anyone, lost the front end of his Yamaha, and although uninjured, was out of the race. There was still, though, plenty of action to come. On the third lap, Jean-Michel Bayle passed Matasevich at the end of a whoop section. In the next bank corner, Matasevich returned the favor and regained the lead. The same thing happened on the next two go-rounds. Bayle would make the pass and take over the lead. Matasevich, with a block pass maneuver, would take it back. Now that game might have lasted the entire main event, but Matasevich made this critical error. It was a spectacular crash that not only knocked Matasevich out of contention, but sent him to the sidelines too sore to continue. The Kawasaki rider later said he took a new line through the double jump, hit a hole, the back end kicked up, and that was all it took. Matasevich landed hard and was out for the night. Jean-Michel Bayle took the win, his 6th of the season and 3rd in a row, while Suzuki's Mike LaRocco turned in his best race of the year and finished 2nd. 3rd place went to Mike Kidrowski with Guy Cooper 4th, Ron Tishner rounding out the top 5. The next day, it was back to the Silverdome for the second half of the Pontiac doubleheader and round 11 of the Camel Supercross Series. Absent from competition, Jeff Stanton. The early verdict, a separated shoulder that could keep the defending champ out of action for up to 8 weeks. As the competitors readied themselves for practice, Stanton was already undergoing therapy in California. Also sitting out round 11, Jeff Matasevich, Kawasaki ace after this Saturday night crash, was too sore to ride Sunday's event. Despite the absence of the two stars, round 11 did not lack for action. This is the first heat of the night, and that was Steve Lamson getting a little too close to Mike Kidrowski. Later in the heat, Jeff Emig, number 18, tried to keep Mike LaRocco behind him. They both go down. LaRocco, obviously not very happy, takes a swipe at Emig on the way back to his bike. Look at the incident in slow motion, and it's easy to see why LaRocco was upset. While trying to block LaRocco, Emig goes too slow. He falls, pulls LaRocco down with him. LaRocco plants a foot in the midsection, says something that we can't repeat here, gets up, cuffs Emig, and says it again. Mike Kidrowski won the heat, but you believe LaRocco finished 4th. Now let's jump to the second heat of the night. You'll see just how fluid and smooth Jean-Michel is. Not through a corner, but in a crash. To avoid hitting Guy Cooper, Bayle used all the brakes he had and turned the front end. Talk about graceful, that deserves another look. Bayle is probably the only rider that looks good even when he crashes. Not so graceful was this encounter of the strangest kind. Ron Tishner had a qualifying position locked up until Larry Ward lost control of his Suzuki. Both riders made it to the main event by riding the semifinals. The main event at round 11 saw Damon Bradshaw grab the whole shot and never look back. The Yamaha teenager took his 2nd victory of the season, followed by Bayle, LaRocco, and Kidrowski in that order. Along the way, Bradshaw had time to entertain the folks at ringside with this aerial display en route to the checkered flag. One more highlight from round 11. Here's Bradshaw thanking the Pontiac fans for their support. Aerial displays and other dynamic moves performed by the top guns of Supercross are a thing of beauty. Let's take a look at these talented athletes as they twist and turn their cycle seemingly to the point of no return. As the Supercross Series reached round 12, it was evident on-track aggressions were on the upswing. Months later, on Catalina Island, veteran Supercross star Jeff Ward looked back at that point of the season and referred to the new, aggressive breed of riders and their riding styles with this observation.
They just want to prove a point. I think the younger riders want to be reckoned with. They want to show that you can't leave the door open, and they want you to have them in your mind when you're out there on the track. And it doesn't work. I mean, what goes around comes around, and they get paid back. But it seems to be when they get paid back, they don't like it as much. So it makes it a little tougher for them. But it's happened a few times this year. There's been some arguments over situations, but they seem to forget that they did a few of them, you know, to the other riders as well. But it keeps it exciting.
It was not aggressive riding, though, that created the early excitement at Charlotte's Memorial Stadium. Last year's winner, Charlotte native Damon Bradshaw, suffered this crash in practice. For a period of time, it was questionable whether Bradshaw, who suffered a severely sprained thumb as a result of the crash, would even be able to ride. The adrenaline took over, though. The gate dropped. Damon was on the line. The next bit of excitement came in heat number 1. Mike Kidrowski, rider number 4, was the early leader. He's about to be passed by teammate Jeff Matasevich, rider number 7. A short time later, Kidrowski was again the victim of a pass. This time, it was Suzuki's Guy Cooper doing the honors. Now, Kidrowski must have figured enough is enough, and it's time for revenge. Just a few seconds later, on a tight right-hand hairpin turn, Kidrowski ran it in low and hard and knocked the wheels from under Cooper's Suzuki. Kidrowski went to the main, Cooper to the semifinal. For most of the riders that made it into the main event, Cooper's crash was a preview of things to come. The culprit? A steady rain that turned the track into a muddy, slippery mess. Spirits, though, of the near-capacity crowd were not in the least dampened. Covered with umbrellas, garbage bags, tarps, and whatever else was available, they waited in the rain for the gate to drop. When it did, they were rewarded by hometown hero Damon Bradshaw grabbing the lead as the field headed towards corner number 1. In pursuit of Bradshaw, series points leader Jean-Michel Bale, Guy Cooper, Jeff Ward, Jeff Matasevich, and the rest of the talent-loaded field. It was Cooper that emerged in the early going to challenge Bradshaw and provide the excitement. On the slick, mud-filled track, Cooper found enough traction to make this pass and took over the number 1 spot. The crowd sensed that was just the beginning, and the crowd was right. The veteran Cooper, looking for his first ever Supercross win, and teenage Damon Bradshaw, with a hometown crowd screaming their support, took unbelievable chances. Like this mid-air pass as Bradshaw took back the number 1 position. The fans at Memorial Stadium were in a frenzy as the pair of riders hammered the treacherous track. There was no way 20 laps could be run without one or both of them making some kind of mistake. The fans were right again. Bradshaw, perhaps bothered by the thumb injury suffered in practice, or perhaps due to a momentary loss of concentration, fell victim to the slippery conditions. That left Cooper out front with Bale in the runner-up spot. But not for long. With the race winding down, the series points leader took the lead when Cooper gave his Suzuki a little too much throttle. In slow motion, the rear end of Cooper's Suzuki tried to pass the front end. With that mistake, went Cooper's chance for a Supercross win. Jean-Michel Bale, who had ridden cautiously to stay out of trouble and to protect his championship points lead, found himself out front and on the way to his 7th victory of the season. The 2 stars of round 12, Bradshaw and Cooper, did, however, perform once more on center stage. The 2 of them came together in a hairpin turn and again were victims of the slippery, treacherous track. Cooper, though, rebounded one more time. In a battle of 29-year-olds with time running out, Cooper passed Jeff Ward to claim the runner-up position for the day, while Ward settled for 3rd. 4th place went to Michael Rockland, with KTM's Mike Fisher claiming 5th. Mike Kidrowski, with a 12th place finish, took 2nd place in the standings from the injured Stanton, while hometown hero Damon Bradshaw finished 11th. The flight to the finish was a painful journey for some, but playing hurt is a mark of a champion, and the man defending the title can certainly attest to that. Dallas, Texas, round 13 of the series marked the return of Jeff Stanton following a potential season-ending shoulder injury in Pontiac. Doctors had said he'd be out at least 6 to 8 weeks, but Stanton thought otherwise, made his comeback in just a week and a half.
Basically put a lot of heat through it to just pump the blood through it, because blood is what makes things heal. And you just lay on your back with machines on you and stare at the ceiling for 8 days.
But there was nothing laid back once Stanton was back in the seat. Getting a good hole shot would be one way to get back in the championship hunt. And that's just what he, along with Damon Bradshaw, did. The pair of riders avoided a major pileup in the first corner that claimed several victims, including Jean-Michel Bayle. The Frenchman was next to last at the outset of the 20-lap main. By the second lap, Bradshaw, Matasevich, and Stanton were running in a tight pack. But halfway through, Jeff Stanton will find out how well that tender shoulder is doing when he loses his front end heading into a turn and goes down. Stanton was able to climb back up and get back on his bike, although well off the pace. On lap 6, Matasevich is looking to move past Bradshaw, but spins out. Teammate Jeff Ward takes advantage of the miscue and moves into second. By now, Bradshaw was enjoying a comfortable lead, but things would soon start heating up. By lap 13, the senior statesman of Supercross was breathing down the youngster's neck. He was looking for the slightest opportunity. Here's the live call.
Look at this. Jeff Ward draws alongside Damon Bradshaw over the finish line jump, and Jeff Ward has made the pass, and he takes over the #1 position. Jeff Ward, the Kawasaki star for so many years, 2 times a Supercross champ, has passed the teenager from Charlotte, North Carolina, and he did it in convincing style.
But Ward's reign at the top would be short-lived. Just 2 laps later, Bradshaw would come back, showing little, if any, respect for his elder. He makes the pass with a good drive through the whoops. He makes it stick by holding off Ward coming out of the corner. Bradshaw was back in the lead. Ward would once again nip at the back tire of Damon Bradshaw, but the youngster grabbed a handful of throttle and doubled to the top of the step-up jump. That move proved to be the difference in round 13 of the Camel Supercross Series as Damon Bradshaw collected his 3rd victory of the season. Meanwhile, Mike Kudrowski, who was close to the leaders all night, finished 3rd and moved to 2nd place in the standings. As the top guns of Supercross headed into Las Vegas for round 14, the flight to the finish was nearing the home stretch. But for one rider, the flight was just taking off. Las Vegas is a town where dreams are won and lost with a roll of dice. In Supercross, races are won and lost at the drop of the gate. For number 6, Mike Larocco, the starting line has always been his burial ground, never once cashing in on that crapshoot that typifies the start of every Supercross event. But on this night, the 20-year-old Suzuki rider would deal himself a winning hand. Larocco, a notoriously slow starter, was out in previously uncharted water. The view was good from up front, and he was not about to give it up. The talented Larocco, whose trademark is charging from the rear of the pack to the front, was now fighting off challenges from the likes of Jeff Stanton and Jeff Ward. Meanwhile, Jeff Matasevich, last year's winner in Vegas, was on the gas. He moved all the way to the number 3 spot. But coming out of a series of whoops, heading into a turn, Matasevich is right on the rear wheel of Jeff Stanton with nowhere to go. Matasevich bails off the bike and into the hay bale. He knocked himself out of the race and took the cameraman with him. But watch again. As Matasevich takes a roll in the hay, our cameraman keeps on rolling. Rolling along in 2nd place was Jeff Stanton, who soars through the air, only to find out he overjumped the triple. For the 2nd week in a row, he loses control of his Honda, high sides, and bites the dirt. By the time he picked his bike up, he was back in 5th and out of the hunt. From then on, Mike Larocco's fate was in his own hands. It was merely him against the slippery Silver Bowl track. And Mike Larocco, who's found himself on the rostrum many times in 2nd and 3rd place, would finally claim the first Supercross win of his career. And for Team Suzuki, the monkey was also off their back as the factory captured its first win in 1991. From Las Vegas, the stars of the Supercross Series headed east to the Meadowlands in New Jersey. It was accepted if Jean-Michel Bayle stayed out of trouble and avoided injury, the 1991 Supercross crown would be his. There would be no let-up, though, among the rest of the stars of the series. There were thousands of dollars to be awarded in runner-up positions. 1992 factory contracts were on the line. And most important, the intense drive to compete and win would not be rested until the final checkered flag. Then, too, while no one was wishing bad luck on the series leader, there was that slim chance that Vail might experience a run of bad luck, like in the second heat race of the night. In the early going, Vail was off the pace and had to make several passes to gain a transfer position to the main event. On the final lap, that position was secure, but perhaps Vail was just not sure. On the last corner, the series leader attempted one more pass. Vail ran into the rear of Mike Baracco, and both riders were down. Fortunately, there was no harm done. Despite the fall, Baracco finished fourth, while Vail made it to the main event by riding a semifinal. It was the kind of incident, though, that could have spelled disaster. The kind of incident to be avoided in Vail's flight to the finish. The kind of incident caused by defensive riding in the early going, geared towards staying out of trouble. According to Jeff Stanton, he's been there before. The way to avoid those kinds of incidents is to not back off a bit.
Well, when you start slowing down, everything changes. The track changes. When the track changes, you could start making mistakes. You come up shorter on jumps. You start slowing down sooner in the corners, and you just start losing time. So you always stay focused and ride 100%, and then nothing changes. And when the checkered flag comes out, you can slow down.
With the main event underway, it was obvious Jeff Stanton was heeding his own advice. Jeff Ward had the early lead, but through the nastiest jumps and whoops on the track, Stanton pulled even, took the good line through the corner, and gained the #1 spot. Right behind the leading duo was Damon Bradshaw. In Las Vegas, Bradshaw moved to second place in the standings. The best way to stay there was to beat those riders behind him, and those riders included Jeff Stanton. To beat Stanton, however, Bradshaw had to go through Ward. The first pass was made just after the finish line jump. In the next corner, Ward regained the lead. The next pass came in a rough set of whoops, and this time Bradshaw made it stick. From second place, the Yamaha teenager set his sights on Stanton. Within a lap and a half, he was in the shadow of the defending Supercross champ. From that point, the action could best be described as all-out war. Bradshaw against Stanton. Yamaha against Honda. It was a classic one-on-one confrontation that brought the crowd to their feet and left them there. The first move was Bradshaw's. He found the new line and made the pass. Stanton, with sheer determination, came right back with a pass of his own. Bradshaw responded to that by twisting the throttle a little harder. He was again in control of the #1 spot. For the next several laps, Bradshaw controlled the pace. It was reasonable to assume that Stanton, in only the third race back after his Pontiac injury, was tired. He would be content with second place. That thought, however, was not in the mind of Jeff Stanton. When the opportunity came, Stanton took full advantage. This time it was an all-out effort that would carry Stanton all the way to the checkered flag and move him from fourth to third in the championship standings. In the closing stages of round 15, as Stanton was winning his fourth race of the season and Bradshaw was finishing second, Las Vegas winner Mike Baracco came from off the pace to finish third. Series points leader Jean-Michel Vail came through the pack to finish fourth. Guy Cooper rounded out the top 5. Stanton and Bradshaw celebrated their 1-2 finish, but for early race leader Jeff Ward, it was more of the same bad luck that had plagued the veteran throughout the series. A piece of plastic lodged in Ward's brake mechanism caused this scary mid-air brush with Benny Stevenson. Stevenson crashed while Ward, unable to keep pace without a rear brake, eventually finished 12th. But as the series headed west, the Kawasaki riders' luck was about to change. The Oklahoma State Fairgrounds in Oklahoma City was familiar territory to the Kawasaki veteran. Ward was the winner of Oklahoma's first Supercross just 2 years before. At round 16 of the 1991 season, Ward's flight to the finish would duplicate that feat. For the 8th consecutive year, Ward claimed a Supercross win.
The key has been motivation. I got a lot of great people that back me up, Kawasaki, and support me, and the new riders coming up just keep me motivated. I like winning. I like, showing these guys that, I'm still hanging in there and I'm still going to be somebody to look, a threat to win each individual race. And It's just, I think motivation is the main factor.
As the gate dropped for the main event, the crowd focused on Guy Cooper from nearby Stillwater, Oklahoma. He was the heavy favorite, and Cooper did not disappoint. The Stillwater native, number 5 on the yellow Suzuki, and Jeff Matasevich, number 7, led the field through corner number 1. Out of the corner to the roar of approval from the partisan crowd, it was Cooper. The lead, however, short-lived. Matasevich, who was passed in the first corner by Ward and Bale, found a good line and went all the way to the head of the pack, and Cooper was in trouble. Let's look at that amazing piece of riding in slow motion. On top of the finish line jump, Cooper landed on a hay bale. He just missed T-boning Jeff Ward. Then at the bottom of the jump, Cooper ran off the track. Never shutting off, Cooper re-entered the track next to Bale, and in the next corner, passed the Frenchman. From the opening lap, the action in Oklahoma never stopped. Jeff Stanton became part of the fray, and along with Cooper and Ward, kept the fans on the edge of their seats. There were more passes than could be kept track of as the talented field fought for position and chased the early leader, Jeff Matasevich. Cooper, who had come close on many occasions, had never won a Supercross event. He wanted this one in front of the hometown crowd. Stanton, whose championship hopes were dashed with the Pontiac crash, was looking for wins to show he was the rightful number 1. Matasevich, the race leader with the season rapidly drawing to a close, wanted to win to justify preseason hopes. No one, though, wanted to win more than Jeff Ward. In his career, the Kawasaki superstar had captured 7 national championships, including 2 Camel Supercross crowns. The 1991 season had thus far not been kind to Ward. Crashes, injuries, and just plain bad luck had the second-guessers wondering if Ward was not over the hill. Ward was intent on answering that question with a win. When he passed teammate Matasevich, Ward was on the way. The action behind him, though, did not let up a bit. Cooper, inspired by the Oklahoma crowd, moved to the rear wheel of Matasevich and executed a perfect block pass. Cooper's second place, though, would not last long. On Catalina Island, the incident was recalled.
I got underneath him, and I was just going to push him out to where he couldn't get by me. And his handlebar went in my shroud, and it locked, and eyesight is up and over the jump.
It was a slick off-camber turn, and he just came on the inside with too much speed to make the corner, and unfortunately I was on the outside, and it put us both off the track and on the ground.
Jeff Ward won the event. Jean-Michel Bale, with the second-place finish, clinched the Supercross crown. With 2 events remaining, Bale had an insurmountable points lead.
Yeah, I'm very happy tonight. You know, it's a big dream for me to win the championship. I work for 4 years right now for, you know, to come to US, try to learn everything, and I won this championship. I'm very happy, you know. It's like a big wedding, and it's happened tonight. I'm very happy. I want to thank everybody for this.
Jean-Michel Bale took the 1991 title with a smooth, error-free style of riding and by avoiding confrontation with the competition. But there was plenty of aggressive riding which rocked stadiums across the country. It was moments like these that make Supercross the most exciting sport on 2 wheels. From Oklahoma, the series moved to Spartan Stadium, San Jose, California for the next last event of the season. With the title wrapped up, the attention of the crowd was drawn to the battle for second between Bradshaw and Stanton, and the late season antics of Jeff Ward, Guy Cooper, and Jeff Matasevich. The crowd anticipated action. What they got was arguably the most exciting and certainly the most bizarre race of the year. When the gate dropped for the main event, the eyes of the crowd and the lens of the cameras followed the mass of riders headed to corner number 1. No one was aware Damon Bradshaw was stuck in the start gate. He finally got underway. No one paid attention. He was so far behind the rest of the screaming pack that catching up would be next to impossible. Instead, the crowd and the cameras were focused up front. Jeff Ward took the lead from Larry Ward with a block pass, and the race was underway. With Jeff Ward out front, the action in the early going was provided by Suzuki's Larry Ward and Jeff Matasevich. Ward did everything that could be done to keep Matasevich behind him, but Matasevich was not about to be denied. He made the pass, then set his sights on his teammate, Jeff Ward. Meanwhile, several riders were coming through the pack. Guy Cooper in fourth was leading a charge that included Doug Dubach, Jeff Stanton, and incredibly all the way up to 12th place, Damon Bradshaw. The Yamaha rider was on a roll and passing everyone in sight. Up front, Matasevich caught Ward, set him up, and made the pass. Now at that point, Matasevich was in control. He had the lead. His teammate was right behind to block traffic. Guy Cooper, though, was not at all impressed. Cooper grabbed a handful of throttle and on the roughest part of the track, blasted past Jeff Ward to take over second. Where was Bale? Well, the newly crowned champ was not having the best of nights. Back to the front of the pack with a white flag in sight and a repeat of the Matasevich-Cooper Oklahoma brawl.
We came over side by side, came down. I think I got blamed for the incident, but the more people look at the tape, they have mixed emotions. Everyone has mixed emotions on it. A lot of people say it was my fault, a lot of people say it was Cooper's fault. But it was one of those things where two riders were trying to put two bikes in one line at the same time on the last lap.
With Cooper and Matasevich on the ground, Yamaha's Doug Dubach took the lead, followed by Jeff Stanton, and all the way from the back of the pack, Damon Bradshaw. The battle for second place in the series was about to heat up. The pass that Bradshaw put on Stanton was the best of the night. Only Dubach stood between Bradshaw and the checkered flag.
I didn't know who it was, but I knew it was someone closing fast, and I just knew I wanted to win that race worse than anything, so I just held it on and I made it there first.
Heading into San Jose, only 36 riders since the origin of Supercross in 1972 had captured main event wins. Doug Dubach joined that exclusive club. He did it with a win in one of the most memorable races in the history of the sport. After 6 long, grueling months, countless miles on the road, and airline terminals from one end of the country to the other, endless hours of training, scores of pre-race interviews,
It's a tired course.
and all too little time to spend with family and friends, the Camel Supercross Series had boiled down to a final event. For Jean-Michel Bale, the series champ, it was a final opportunity to capture his 8th win. No rider in the history of the sport had ever won more than 7 in a single season.
I already won the championship, so I have nothing to lose. So I'm gonna try to win the last race, and my goal is to try to make a good start and win the race.
For Stanton and Bradshaw, there was still the battle for second place, but more than that, they and the rest of the field would have one final chance for redemption. Injuries, crashes, hard luck. It was all in the past. What mattered was a final performance to set the record straight. A final chance to answer the multitude of questions that all began, what if? With the season finale underway, Jean-Michel Bale took it upon himself to answer the critics. The French World Motocross Champion and now Supercross Champion got the good start he wanted. Jeff Matasevich, the early leader, would battle with Bale, but would eventually relinquish the #1 spot. It was a Jean-Michel Bale show and a Jean-Michel Bale series. From Catalina, riders remembered the champ.
I think Bale is probably one of the most talented riders out there today, and I think he showed last year that he had the potential to win a championship coming back from what he did, and he's very smooth, very fast, and I respect him. And he definitely, I think, deserved the championship this year.
Well, he's no different than any one of us. He's got some good talent. I'm going to say he's like a Ron Lachine. Everybody knows what Ron Lachine was like, and he worked really good with the bike and was really fluid all the time. And he's real similar to Ron Lachine. Doesn't really like to work hard for it. It comes natural to him.
Come January, I'm going to be ready, and I know a lot of the other American riders are going to be ready, and pretty much we're all going to be out to get him.
He's probably the smartest rider, or the rider that does the most thinking while he's on the track, and the whole time being fluid. It seems to me if I'm thinking a lot, my lap times go down. Although my style can get a little better, my times go down, and Jean-Michel can put everything right in order, and he's on top right now.
The battle for second place in the standings went down to the wire. Earlier in qualifying rounds, Bradshaw could not keep the drive chain on his Yamaha. Twice he ended up on the side of the track after crashing, wondering what was going on. No one had the answer, so it was with apprehension that Bradshaw rode the final qualifying round of the evening. There were no problems, and despite his obvious display of caution, Bradshaw won the race. In the main event, Bradshaw started slow. He was not convinced the problem was solved, and after surviving an earlier high-speed crash, he was taking no chances. On the last lap, Bradshaw finally threw caution to the wind. He passed several riders to finish sixth and beat Stanton by a single point in the chase for runner-up honor. The hero, though, was the lone European rider in the field, Jean-Michel Vail, when the Frenchman crossed the finish line after 20 of the longest laps in his career. The 1991 Camel Supercross Series was brought to a close. It was a series full of excitement and spectacular racing. A series full of turmoil and, at times, animosities. A series full of surprises and what-ifs. The series also marked the retirement of two of the most popular champions of the sport. The Osho, Johnny O'Mara, who captured the championship in 1984 and retired with 7 Supercross victories to his credit. And the winningest rider in the history of Supercross, Rick Johnson. In 1986, again in 1988, RJ earned the #1 plate while amassing a record 28 career Supercross wins. Both riders, as well as the 1991 season, will long be remembered by Supercross fans. From Orlando to LA, it was one fantastic flight to the finish.